Nobody tells women this, but the things that truly reach a man's heart have very little to do with looks, humor, or being the most impressive person in the room. It's not about personality, appearance, or how exciting your life seems online. The women who genuinely stay on a man's mind long after the moment has passed, the kind he keeps thinking about without even understanding why, do something much simpler. They rely on small, quiet gestures that most people overlook. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced, just subtle actions that land on a deeper emotional level. Once he feels them, they don't disappear easily. In this message, I'm going to break that down in a way that helps you clearly understand what actually creates that emotional impact and why it matters far more than most people realize. Most women never recognize the importance of these things because nobody ever clearly connected the dots for them. These aren't complicated techniques or rare behaviors. They are simple human reactions that often go unnoticed. Still, they can completely change how a man experiences a moment and how he remembers you afterward. As we go further, I'll walk you through these small actions one by one and explain why they affect men so deeply in such a natural way. You'll also see how they work without forcing anything or trying too hard. By the end, you'll understand how something extremely simple can quietly stay in a man's mind for days. This is brought to you by Relationship Secrets, a space focused on real and honest relationship insights without the usual confusion or recycled advice. Here's what most women don't fully understand about men, and it's not a criticism because very few people ever explain it properly. Men feel emotions far more deeply than they usually show, but they don't always express them in obvious ways. A man doesn't fall for someone just because of a perfect conversation or an impressive moment. He falls based on how he felt in a specific instance, and often that moment is extremely small. It could be a glance, a brief pause, or a subtle touch where nothing was said, yet everything was understood. His mind doesn't always process it consciously right away. Instead, his nervous system reacts first, picking up signals faster than he can think them through. Long before he can explain why he feels drawn to someone, something inside him has already responded. The first gesture is a slow smile. Not the big rehearsed smile or the polite one you use out of habit, but something softer and more natural. It starts in the eyes before it reaches the lips, like a reaction that wasn't planned. It feels real because it is real. Men are constantly reading facial expressions without even realizing it. They're trying to figure out whether someone is truly present or just going through the motions. A slow, unforced smile gives him something words can't. It tells him what he said actually reached you in a genuine way. It feels honest because it can't be easily faked. When he sees that kind of reaction, it creates a quiet emotional pull that draws him in and makes him want to experience it again. This is exactly why that small expression has such a strong effect. A big smile can feel polite, but a slow one feels personal. It gives him the sense that he was actually seen in that moment, not just responded to. Men are always searching for signs of something real, and this kind of reaction stands out because it feels effortless and authentic. It's not about performing or trying to act a certain way. In fact, the more natural it is, the stronger it becomes. When you're truly present, listening and engaged in the moment, that reaction happens on its own, without effort. And that's what makes it powerful. You don't have to force it or think about it. It simply appears when you're actually there. And when it happens, he notices it more than he lets on. He may not react in the moment, he may not even consciously label it as important, but something in him definitely registers it. That small, unplanned smile lands deeper than it appears on the surface. It's not about awareness in the thinking mind right away. It's about an emotional imprint being created in real time. Later, when he's by himself and the noise of the day settles, that moment comes back without effort. He finds himself replaying it, not because he's trying to, but because it stood out in a way he didn't fully understand in the moment. That's usually when the questions start forming in his head about what exactly made that interaction feel different and why it's still sitting in his thoughts long after it ended. The next subtle gesture is leaning in while he's talking, but in a very natural, unforced way, not exaggerated or intentional, just a slight movement of your body that brings you a bit closer when he's sharing something. It might be a story, an opinion, or something personal, and without even thinking about it, you shift in his direction. That small change communicates something powerful without words. It signals attention, presence, and genuine interest in what he's saying. In a world where most people are distracted or only partially engaged, that kind of full attention stands out. He doesn't just hear your words, he feels your presence aligning with them. That creates a sense of being genuinely received, not just listened to. And that distinction is something most people rarely experience in everyday interaction. Then there's something as simple as using his name naturally during conversation, not repeatedly, not in a forced or overly intentional way, just occasionally when it fits smoothly into what you're saying. That small detail has a stronger emotional effect than most people realize because hearing your own name creates a sense of personal recognition. It shifts the interaction from general conversation to something more direct and meaningful. He stops feeling like just another person in the room and starts feeling individually acknowledged. That feeling of being specifically seen is not as common as it should be, and when it happens, it stands out. Over time, these small moments build a quiet emotional connection in his mind, shaping how he feels around you in a way he may not fully understand, but definitely remembers. The fourth gesture is something incredibly simple, but it often carries more emotional weight than anything said out loud. It's about remembering a small detail he casually mentioned once, something he didn't emphasize or expect anyone to hold on to. Maybe it was something he said in passing, almost like background information. Then later on, without making a big deal out of it, you bring it up naturally in conversation. It might sound like, "Wait, didn't you say your brother is the funny one in your family?" Or, "How did that situation at work turn out? Did it go the way you wanted?" It's not rehearsed, not dramatic, just a quiet reference that shows you were actually paying attention when he spoke. What makes this so powerful is not memory itself, but meaning. It tells him that his words didn't just pass through the moment and disappear. They stayed somewhere. They were received, processed, and kept. That alone shifts how he experiences you. He stops feeling like he's just talking into noise or filling silence and starts feeling like his thoughts actually land somewhere real. For many men, that experience is rarer than it should be. Most conversations don't give that sense of being truly held in someone's attention. So when you naturally bring up something he thought was minor, it creates a quiet emotional impact. He realizes he wasn't just heard in the moment, he was remembered afterward, and that difference matters more than it seems. The fifth gesture is a light, natural touch followed by letting go. It's something very small, like briefly touching his arm when something makes you both laugh, or gently touching his hand while making a point. Nothing staged or drawn out, just an easy physical moment that happens in flow with the interaction. Then you move on without holding on to it or turning it into anything bigger. No pause to check his reaction, no added emphasis, just a simple human moment of connection that exists and then ends just as naturally. What makes this combination so effective is the balance it creates. The touch itself communicates warmth and comfort, but the fact that it's not extended or overdone keeps it feeling genuine. It doesn't feel like performance or strategy, it feels like instinct. And because it isn't held or exaggerated, it leaves space. Space for him to notice it, process it, and feel its absence afterward. That contrast between contact and release is what makes it linger in his awareness. It doesn't overwhelm him in the moment, but it stays with him afterward in a subtle way that he doesn't immediately analyze, yet still feels. Touch is one of the most immediate forms of communication between people. It doesn't really go through logic or analysis first. It goes straight into feeling. A light, natural touch from someone you feel drawn to can create a subtle response in the nervous system, something like warmth, ease, or a quiet sense of connection that words often struggle to match. So the touch itself already carries meaning. But what makes it even more impactful is what happens after. When she touches him and then simply continues on like it was nothing out of the ordinary, that contrast is what makes it stand out. She doesn't pause to check his reaction, doesn't draw attention to it, and doesn't turn it into a moment. It just happens naturally, and then life keeps moving. From his side, though, something shifts. He becomes more aware of the space between them, more aware of where the touch happened, and more aware of the absence of it once it's gone. It creates a quiet kind of awareness, not because anything was forced, but because something real was briefly there and then disappeared. And often, that small contrast is enough to make him want that sense of closeness again without fully understanding why. The sixth gesture is something far less visible, but just as powerful: being comfortable with silence. Not rushing to fill every pause, not feeling the need to constantly keep the conversation moving, and not treating quiet moments like something is going wrong. Instead, just allowing the silence to exist without tension, without overthinking it, and without trying to fix it. This is more uncommon than it seems. Most people feel a natural pressure to fill silence quickly because it can feel awkward or like the interaction is losing momentum. So they talk more, add extra words, or try to keep things flowing even when nothing needs to be said. But when a woman is genuinely comfortable in those quiet moments, it changes the emotional tone completely. He doesn't feel pressure to perform or keep everything alive through constant effort. He feels space to just exist in the moment. That kind of ease is noticeable. It communicates that she isn't relying on constant stimulation or noise to feel okay. She's grounded enough to simply be there without needing to fill every gap. And in that shared stillness, something different begins to form. The interaction becomes less about managing conversation and more about simply sharing presence. That kind of calm can create a deeper sense of connection than constant talking ever could, because nothing is being forced or maintained artificially. The seventh gesture is one most people don't expect: looking at him with quiet pride. Not exaggerated praise, not verbal validation, and not anything overdone. Just a brief moment where her expression naturally reflects that she noticed something in him and genuinely respects it. It could be something small, like how he handled a situation, how he expressed himself, or the way he showed thoughtfulness or effort in a moment. It lasts only a second, but it carries weight. There's no performance in it, no explanation, just recognition in its purest form. And then it passes, as if nothing was made of it at all. What makes this so meaningful is that many men move through life without often receiving that kind of unspoken acknowledgement. They may appear confident or self-assured, but beneath that is a quieter need to feel genuinely seen for who they are, not just what they do. When a woman expresses that kind of silent appreciation, it communicates understanding on a deeper level. It says she notices not only his actions, but the character behind them. That moment can stay with him longer than expected, not because it's dramatic, but because it feels real. It creates a sense of being recognized in a way that doesn't require explanation. And when a man feels that kind of recognition from someone he values, it naturally shapes how he sees her in return. It builds a quiet emotional attachment based not on intensity, but on feeling understood in a way that feels rare and meaningful. Now, the most important thing to understand from everything we've covered is this: these 7 gestures are not tricks, and they're not some kind of method to control a man's feelings or force a reaction. The moment they become a strategy, they lose what makes them powerful in the first place. If you're doing any of this with an agenda, if you're performing instead of actually being present, he will pick up on it. Men are more sensitive to inconsistency than they're often given credit for. He may not always be able to explain it, but he can feel feel when something is real and when something is being acted out. And once that feeling of this isn't genuine enters the interaction, the emotional connection starts to weaken and eventually shut down. That's why the real takeaway here isn't about memorizing behaviors or trying to add new moves to how you interact. It's about something much simpler and more honest, learning to actually be present when you're with someone, to stop monitoring yourself so much, to stop overthinking how you're being perceived, and to stop managing every moment in your head. Instead, you just show up fully. You listen without planning your response at the same time. You let yourself react naturally instead of controlling every expression. You stay in the moment instead of stepping outside of it to evaluate it. And when that shift happens, these gestures don't need to be forced at all. They start happening on their own. You lean in because you're genuinely interested in what he's saying, not because you're trying to signal interest. You smile slowly because something actually touches you, not because you're trying to look a certain way. You use his name because he's the one you're really talking to, not just filling space with conversation. You touch his arm because the moment feels warm, not because you're thinking about impact. It all becomes natural instead of calculated, and that's exactly what makes it meaningful. That's when something subtle changes in how he experiences you, not because you've done anything dramatic, but because being around you feels different. He may not even fully understand why, but he notices it. And later, when he's alone, those small moments don't leave his mind easily. Not because they were planned, but because they felt real. The difference between simply getting a man's attention and actually staying in his thoughts has very little to do with doing more and everything to do with being more present. Attention can come and go easily. It's surface level and temporary. But emotional impact, the kind that stays with someone, comes from something deeper. It comes from presence, warmth, and genuine human connection in small ordinary moments. And once you understand that, these 7 things stop feeling like steps to follow and start feeling like natural expressions of how you show up when you're actually there in the moment. That's the real core of it. Not performance, not strategy, just presence. What sits underneath all of this is something most people miss when they talk about attraction. It's not really about isolated gestures at all. It's about regulation of attention and emotional safety in a moment between 2 people. When someone is fully present with another person, they create a kind of psychological clarity that feels rare in everyday life. Most interactions are split attention, half on the person, half on thoughts, self-monitoring, phones, or future planning. So when someone actually gives undivided presence, even in very ordinary ways, the nervous system of the other person registers it as something different from normal social noise. That's why small actions feel amplified. A smile, a pause, a glance, or a simple acknowledgement doesn't carry meaning on its own. It carries meaning because of the quality of attention behind it. The brain is constantly asking, consciously and unconsciously, am I being truly seen here, or am I just part of someone's routine interaction? When the answer feels like I am being seen, there's a subtle emotional anchoring that forms. It's not dramatic, but it's sticky. It stays. A lot of what gets interpreted as attraction is actually this regulation effect. One person stabilizes the emotional environment without trying to control it, and the other person experiences that as ease, safety, and curiosity. That combination is powerful because it removes effort from the interaction. Nothing feels chased or forced, so the experience feels more real than transactional conversations people are used to. Over time, the brain starts associating that feeling with the person who created it, not because of one specific gesture, but because of repeated emotional states experienced in their presence. That's why trying to artificially copy behaviors never works long term. The surface action might be similar, but the internal state is missing, and people sense that mismatch more than they realize. So the deeper truth here isn't about learning how to act in a way that produces a reaction. It's about becoming someone whose attention feels steady, warm, and fully engaged in the moment. When that is present, everything else you described naturally emerges without effort, because it's no longer something you're doing to achieve an outcome. It becomes just how you relate to another person when you are actually there with them. In the end, all of this comes down to something very simple. Even if it gets wrapped in a lot of detail along the way, human connection isn't built through perfect words, perfect timing, or carefully planned behavior. It's built in the small space between two people where attention is either real or it isn't. That space is where everything meaningful quietly forms, long before anyone consciously notices it happening. Most people spend their time focused on what they should do in conversations, how they should appear, or what response they're trying to get. But what actually shapes emotional impact is far less controlled than that. It's the quality of presence someone brings into the moment. When a person is genuinely there, not split between performance and awareness, the interaction feels different on a level that's hard to explain but easy to sense. It doesn't feel managed, it feels experienced. And that difference is what the mind remembers later, even when the moment itself seemed ordinary. The gestures that were described only work when they are not treated as tools. The moment they become intentional techniques, they lose the natural flow that gives them meaning. Real emotional impact doesn't come from doing the right thing. It comes from being in a state where the right things happen naturally because you're actually engaged. A smile that appears because something genuinely touched you carries weight. A pause that isn't rushed feels grounded. A moment of eye contact that isn't forced creates recognition. None of these things are powerful on their own. They become powerful through sincerity. What people often misunderstand is that attraction and emotional connection are not built in dramatic peaks. They are built in repetition of small, real signals that tell the nervous system, this is safe, this is real, this is present. Over time, those signals accumulate into familiarity and emotional comfort. And once someone associates that feeling with a specific person, it becomes harder to separate the emotion from the individual who created it. But the deeper layer underneath all of this is not about influencing someone else at all. It's about the state you are in yourself. When you are not preoccupied with managing how you come across, when you are not constantly observing yourself from the outside, something shifts internally. You stop interacting in fragments and start interacting as a whole person. That is when your attention becomes steady, your responses become natural, and your presence becomes felt without effort. In that kind of state, connection doesn't need to be engineered. It develops on its own because nothing is blocking it. There is no tension between intention and expression, no gap between what you feel and what you show. Everything aligns in a way that feels effortless, and that effortlessness is what others experience as authenticity. So the real takeaway is not about memorizing gestures or trying to replicate effects. It's about understanding that people respond most deeply to what is real in you in the moment you are with them. Not what you are trying to achieve, not what you are trying to signal, but what is actually present. When that becomes the foundation, everything else you are looking for tends to follow naturally without needing to be forced or figured out step by step.